So it's only when you go, so where is the other person in relation to this brick wall? Oh, they're the other side of it. Then the problem is, oh, there is a brick wall between me and the other person. So it isn't I'm trying to talk to a brick wall. It's there's something stopping the communication between me and this other person.
Welcome back, everybody. We're joined today by Alison Smith. Alison is the author of the book Can't See the Wood for the Trees and also host of podcast Landscaping Your Life with Alison Smith. Alison, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, and thanks for inviting me.
This is going to be a good one, I think. Anthony, how are you today?
I'm good. I was reading the bio and I saw the Can't See the Wood for the Trees. I'm like, this is exactly what I want to talk about today. So I'm excited you're here.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. So you're joining us today from Scotland, right?
I am indeed, yes. I can look out of my office window and see Edinburgh across the Firth of Forth. So there's some sea directly in front of me and then Edinburgh on the skyline.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Scotland's a place I've briefly been, but would love to explore a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's lovely. I just kept on moving north, and I just really, really enjoy it around here. I think perhaps for the nature and the landscape, which obviously we'll get onto shortly, I'm sure.
Yes. So yeah, we'd love to kind of dive into your background, kind of learn where you're from and all of the things along the way that made you who you are today.
I think it started in, I've never been able to keep quiet, I think. And I've always wanted to make things better. So when I was at school, so I lived in the Midlands in the UK and England, and I now live in Scotland, so I've just kept on moving north. But if I look back at what I was doing at school, I was always, the one I wasn't great at sports, but I was the one that everybody rang when to find out whether the sporting event was going on or not on a Saturday morning. Oh, we'll ring Alison and check it's on. And then I was chairman of the area youth council, so we had lots of different youth clubs, and I was the chairman of that sort of at 14, 15. And so I think I've always, and then when I went to university, I was again chairman of the sort of business studies society. Not that academic. But I think I always wanted to be involved. I can always remember writing a letter to a magazine at, say, 14 about, encouraging young people to participate and not put up with, to be the change they want to see, really. And then I think I went to university and that all went out the window. And I think I describe it as I went to sleep, really. So it was only, I don't know, I think I just went into lots of must, sorts and shoulds. This is what you do when you go to university. This is what you do when you get a job. I didn't even think about, the career advisor said, purchasing is for you because you like people and you like analysing things and patterns. I always joke about the fact that they said, oh, you've got an Excel, you like Excel spreadsheets. But somebody did point out to me that back in the mid-80s, we didn't have Excel. So, okay. But anyway, liked analysing things. So I started my job, profession in purchasing. And then, but I don't suppose I sort of poked my head above the parapet again until my mid-30s when my husband left the marriage, and then it was, oh, who am I? Oh, there's more to life. And I think I woke up to everything I now talk about, which is self-awareness, emotional intelligence, taking responsibility for our mindset, thinking about how our mindset impacts the outcome we get with ourselves and others. So I suppose that started in my mid-30s, and I'm now sort of early 60s. And I was really, really lucky that I went in 2000, went on a neuro-linguistic programming course, and my boss at the time, we'd got 2 banks merging, and my boss went, oh, we can use all of what you're learning. So I sort of suddenly became the communication coach team person. So it's just brilliant because I could use everything I was learning on the team. I didn't have to sell what I was doing. People would go, oh, Alison's, we got a problem, go and speak to Alison. And then I suppose what happened was I saw there was a diminishing law of returns, really. The fact that there's only so much that you can do with the same team because they're already been, given the skills that they need to take responsibility themselves. They're already aware of and have heard me say it time and time again. So I then, 18 years ago, set myself up working for myself, and in and amongst all that, had just found out the power of metaphor, and therefore now do a bit of mix of procurement, consultancy, soft skills training, and then I've got the book and the podcast around using nature as a metaphor for our lives. So that's where I'm at.
I'm trying to think of where to go with that. There's a lot of ground to cover there.
Here's a big dump of everything.
Let's go back to, you said you were in, the elementary school, and you gravitated towards these leadership roles. Do you know where that came from?
Oh, I think it was just everybody else took 2 steps back. It's mean. It was just that whole, it didn't scare me. It's really interesting. I've had a conversation with somebody this week about something for a client, and they said, well, who told you to do that? And it's that whole, and when I look back at I trace back the emails, it's like, perhaps I did take a bit more responsibility than perhaps I was being given. It's like, I took this email to mean go ahead and do it. So I think especially about problems, if there's a problem there and nobody's solving it, I'll get involved, not so much. I mean, it's interesting because I don't suppose, if I look at that, there's lots of people in the village where I live that are much more step up about things in the local community. So I think I do it within a specific arena, which is quite often business, is quite often hearing somebody say, I can't do that, or I think we had a conversation before we came on about, I'm quite quick to notice when people are making statements that I think are unhelpful to them to achieve the goal they say they want to achieve. So I think I'm just really used to noticing, and what's happened is over time I've come to trust my noticing. So perhaps when I was younger I might have thought, no, that doesn't feel right. Oh, I won't go there, I'll get a funny reaction. Whereas now, if I get it to say, I say it. Now, I don't know, perhaps that comes with age. But there's no, I wouldn't notice if it wasn't. There's lots of things I do not notice, and other people notice it. So if I notice it, it's because I'm there, I believe that I have got something to share, and it perhaps is there to put a mirror up to somebody else to go, really? You've just said that. Is that really true? And I just think I perhaps did learn that at a young age and have just continued to do it. And perhaps had a wobble in the middle about, oh, shouldn't do that. Because, to be fair, I did have a boss once that turned around and said, don't you ever do that to me again.
I was literally going to ask the question. So some people might perceive that persona as like bossy or overstepping. And I'm thinking about that from the perspective of, I've got an 8-year-old who is a natural leader, and I'm working on making sure she is paying attention to her environment too. And so it's not perceived as bossy, but it's actually helpful and encourages people to want to be a part of what she's doing. So how do you walk that line?
Well, the first thing I'd say is if she was a son, would you be saying she was bossy?
Good question.
Because
fair.
and to be fair, I am not one that notices that generally. So next door neighbour daughter who's, I don't have children, the next door daughter who's 10 will sometimes pick me up in, where I do things and don't pick up on, that I've made some big assumption about either sex or whatever, gender. So I mean, there is something about her learning, isn't it? The fact that, I get a different reaction. So I think it's just asking questions about, did that work in that situation? Where does it work? When doesn't it work? When doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? Why did you get that reaction from that person? Because, I absolutely know in coaching sessions that I would describe how I am as a coach sometimes as I can be quite bossy and bitchy because I can be quite direct. But it's because if somebody said that to me in that way, I would be affronted and I would be upset. But when I ask the other person, how did you receive that information? They'll go, you needed to say it like that. I wouldn't have heard it if you'd have been too polite. So I think there's a listening to some people need it hard, some people don't, It's, the conversation I have with my personal trainer is, he has a particular style and that style works for me. And the stereotype of the personal trainer is very different to what he is, but he wouldn't have lasted 2 seconds if he'd have been that. Because for me, in order to encourage me to do anything, he just needs to play it. And so she'll learn, I suppose. She'll learn, and there isn't one size fits all, because for some people she'll absolutely need to be direct and in your face, and other people she'll have to skirt around, and other people realise, what, never going to budge them.
It goes back to what you said early on, just noticing, paying attention to the circumstances.
Noticing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the self-awareness bit of, did that work? Was I surprised by the reaction? Because the other thing is that, there's some people where I observe my behaviour and go, oh my God, I won't raise anything, I'm very quiet. And it's, oh, okay, that's interesting. What's that about? And I'm not saying that's wrong, it's just that because their personality brings that out in me, because I sort of know I have to be a bit more gentle and, very different. I just find it interesting when I observe that in myself and go, oh, I can't be in your face.
So somewhere along the way, you decided that you wanted to get into coaching and helping other people. Is there anything that happened in the time leading up to that moment where you decided to make that switch that kind of influenced that decision? Or is it just kind of something that you always wanted to do and the opportunity just ended up presenting itself?
No, I think it just happened, really. It's like I'm learning it. Everything I share with other people, even on my podcast, I'm learning it at the same time as I'm sharing it. So I'm learning NLP and I'm coming back and people are going, oh, I've got a problem, and I'm able to share it. And so I think that's the way it's gone. It's just that I've realised and noticed the pattern, which is I love sharing what I'm learning, and I'm able to translate it, even though metaphor is quite difficult to explain. I'm able to share it in a way that's quite pragmatic rather than making it too theoretical. And I just think that then meant that why wouldn't I want to do more of that? Because there's a real, what motivates me? What motivates me is somebody going from I'm stuck and I don't know what to do to going, oh my God, that's better, I know what to do. It's not about me telling them what to do, it's just their mindset has shifted for them thinking they're stuck to them realising they're not stuck. And that's hugely, I love it. It's that, and I think it goes back to why did I start procurement? Oh, you like Excel spreadsheet, you like patterns. For me, the sense of satisfaction in being able to ask a question that makes such a powerful difference for somebody else, it's just, wow, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to go and ask questions of people that means that, it opens a door to a whole load of solutions. Yay! You know.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, so I think it just sort of came upon me really.
That's that's interesting for sure. That sort of just making people think about something differently, like you were saying, to ask the questions to help them unstick themselves. Sometimes all it takes
I think
is
so.
just a little bit different perspective or just some sort of little nudge in a particular direction that really gets you out of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think if I look at what happens on LinkedIn, is that LinkedIn have now started doing questions, AI questions, and then you put your answers. It's
Yeah.
like I'm always going to number 7, and here's something else to think about that's taking it off at a different tangent. So I think my brain has always looked at things a bit differently. So everybody else is looking this way, and I'm going, but what about over here? And I suppose what I've learned, and I listen to perhaps my intuition, is rather than say, if everybody's looking at the front, and um, and I go, look left. I'm saying look left because I think the answer's left, rather than yes, you could look right or you could look behind you. So there is a element of me listening to my intuition that says, yes, they're focusing front, but I really think if they look left, that would help.
Can you think of an example of that?
Um, well, okay, and this comes back to using metaphor. So the reason that I use metaphor, so I'll explain why I use metaphor first, and then I'll give you the example. So let me write down example Crossroads, because I'll waffle on and then I'll forget what he'd asked me. So what happened was I discovered in the late mid-90s that if you try and explain too much theory to people, they zone out. So if I was to talk to listeners about supplier management in their organisations, yawn. But if I start talking about gardening and that plants need weeding, feeding, mowing, watering, everybody starts nodding their head. Then when I say, oh, but your suppliers need weeding, feeding, watering. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, well, they do, don't they? Because up till then, supplier management was everybody going, yeah, they don't need looking after, we know what's happening. So for me, that's when I first started realising that metaphor was really quick at helping people understand. What I then did is, rather than the metaphor just being gardening for a very specific business environment, I went, oh, but nature could be a metaphor for our lives. And so the example I'm going to give you is about at a crossroads, where somebody was saying to me, oh, I'm at a crossroads in their life, in business. And so the front ways look on it would be, oh, I've got to go to this crossroads and I've got to make a decision which direction to go. Yeah, that would be the normal conventional way. But what happened was, because we were using metaphor as a nature as a metaphor, it's like, okay, so let's wander around this botanical gardens and we'll have a look at what happens at every crossroads. So we were getting to a crossroads and I was saying, which direction do you want to go? We'll go this direction, right? And then we get to another one, which direction do you want to go? And what happened was, over about 3 or 4 crossroads, the pattern I observed was, every time you're making a decision, you're choosing the route that does not have a signpost telling you where we're going. And that just felt like that was a hit in his face, because it was that, oh, I've been asking for jobs in the organisation. I've been thinking I want a job that's got a signpost on it, but I'm really good at innovation. I'm really good at new business development. That's the job I need to be going for. So I think what was happening was, he was sort of asking, so the front ways look was, oh, how do I talk to the directors about getting a better job and asking for this promotion? And so we were getting sidelined, whereas actually, hang on a minute, we're asking for the wrong job. Yeah, so it's not taking what somebody is saying is the problem as the absolute problem. It's the stepping back enough to go, oh, okay. So that's what happens. So that's the one that comes to mind in terms of everybody thought, oh, Alison, you're seeing that person, he's at a crossroads, you need to help him make a decision. It's like we were nowhere near making a decision. The other thing was when we were exploring it, because once we were exploring it, it's like he just kept wanting to go back to where we were. It's like, well, actually, you're not ready to make a decision at the crossroads. So then we had to go and do some stuff about letting go of where he was at, because otherwise it was, well, I'd like this, but no, I'm scared of leaving where I've been. So I think it's just noticing what's not being said. So it's seeing the big picture, and somebody's only seeing one little bit of it and going. So I always describe it as that sometimes people are there looking into the corner of a room as if those two bits of wall that they can see in front of them. So they're right, the head's right in the corner. And it's like they're saying this is the problem, but all they can see is the corner and two walls.
Right.
And it's that whole, well, hang on a minute, if we turn round, there's another wall, there's another room here. And I have done this outside, so sometimes it's not even another room. It's like we're looking into the corner of a building, and when we turn round, there's a whole, whatever world out here. And so I suppose I've just got really good at noticing when somebody's doing that, and then knowing how to get them to change where they're looking.
Was that the motivation for the book?
The book, I've always wanted to write a book. Always wanted to write a book, and we're doing this 4 years nearly to the day, not 4 years, 24 years, nearly to the day when we're recording this, when I sat there with a friend going, I'm going to write a Landscaping Your Life book. And when I was at the hairdresser's once and somebody said, how long have you been writing your book? My hairdresser said, 10 years. But she's on the 5th, because she'd heard, oh, I'm going to write this book. Oh, no, I'm going to write this book. The problem I'd got is when I started thinking about writing it, it was way before social media had got into it, So trying to explain using paths and nature as a metaphor without the visual input of social media can help is really difficult. So all the books I wrote were far too theoretical. They weren't meaningful enough. And it took a long while to suddenly realise, oh, hang on a minute. When people are stuck, they are using sayings. So they will say, I'm stuck in a rut. I'm going round in circles. I feel like I'm at the deep end. I'm like a fish out of water. It's an uphill struggle. Or I want to turn a corner. I feel like I'm treading water. So people use those phrases when they're stuck. And here in the UK, we would say, can't see the wood for the trees. In other parts of the world, it might be can't see the woods for the trees, or even can't see the forest for the trees. So we use that. So it's like, oh, hang on a minute. People are already relating to metaphors. Therefore, the book is just saying, if you can't see the wood for the trees, here is a whole chapter with 4 or 5 different ways of unbundling that to help. Because basically what we do is, if you've got a problem and I ask you about your problem and you tell me all about your problem, are we going to solve it? Chances are the answer is no, because we will defend why we're stuck. We'll defend how we've got to where we've got to. We'll get very defensive about being told we could do something different. So actually we need to send the story on a coffee break, is how I describe it, whilst we look at the patterns. Yeah. So the patterns of can't see the wood for the trees. Okay, what would we do in a real wood? Because when we can't see the wood for the trees, we are actually buying into that, looking into the corner of the room, and we're going, can't see it. No, can't see anything. I'm stuck. No, there is no solutions. Whereas it's a bit like your inner wisdom's going, oh, there's woods, trees. What would you do in a wood, trees? Oh, well, I'd get a map out. I'd follow a path. I could cut some of the trees down. I could climb a tree. We were at once doing it with sort of 6 business leaders, and they were all doing different sayings, but we were in a wood. And obviously at one point looking quite puzzled. And so this sort of park warden came past and she looked at us and went, does anybody need a map? It's like, yes, exactly. Does anybody need a map? So maps, paths. So for me, if you catch yourself when you're stuck, saying it's an uphill struggle, saying I feel like, so the other week somebody said I feel like a rock and a hard place. So I said, so we were already out in nature because most of my coaching takes place in nature. So it's like, okay, so where is the rock? Where is the hard place? Let's explore this, because when we say we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, then we're actually saying there are no options. And so therefore, when you stand there and go, well, the rock is there and the hard place is there and I'm stuck, and then you go, are you really stuck? Oh no, well, I can step back, or I can go above, or oh, I could go and stand over there. And so there's a few reasons it works. One, because we can find solutions within the metaphor, but the other thing is that we've sort of unhitched the fact that we believe there are no solutions, because suddenly we found loads and loads of solutions in the metaphor, and then our brain just goes, oh, there are solutions. And then that's when I see the relaxation of somebody going, oh, that's better. Because as soon as you do that, you open your head up to your prefrontal cortex, and then you're going to go, oh, I just need to do that. But when we're stuck, we're stressed, and we're believing in the lack of options, and that's never ever the reality of it.
It's all about shifting your mindset, right? Being able to look at it completely differently. And that's part of what what the whole book is about, right? Is trying to help you shift your like tools and problem solving skills to help you shift your mindset when you're stuck.
Yeah, somebody described the book as first aid kit for the mind, because you're feeling overwhelmed and no access to no solutions. So you're stressed, and therefore all the book does is say, try this, or perhaps about that, or it might be about doing this. And by doing that, you've moved into, oh, here's some solutions. And you're already then less overwhelmed because there is something you can do, less stressed because there are things you can do. And then as a result of that, then it's, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do that.
Have you been able to apply any of these things in your own life? Any times you've been stuck or challenged by something and been able to do these things for yourself?
I think I do that all the time, because when I do the, what I did for the podcast is, the Landscaping Your Life podcast is sort of me going out into nature with a saying. So if you feel like you're talking to a brick wall, let's go and talk to a brick wall. And let's, because then we suddenly realise, oh, we use the phrase, and this is perhaps one that I do quite a bit, in terms of it's really easy to describe the other person as the brick wall. It's like, oh, it feels like I'm talking to a brick wall. As soon as our language is the person is the brick wall, and of course the brick wall is never going to talk to us. So it's only when you go, so where is the other person in relation to this brick wall? Oh, they're the other side of it. Then the problem is, oh, there is a brick wall between me and the other person. So it isn't I'm trying to talk to a brick wall. It's there's something stopping the communication between me and this other person. So the solution then's different. So I think it's that different perspective, because so long as we think the other person's a brick wall, they're never going to talk. So why would we try? We give up, and the relationship stays as it is. When we get specific about our use of language and use of the metaphor, then it's, oh, okay, yeah, there's a brick wall between me and the other person. Okay, so how do you get round, over, through the brick wall? Unless, of course, that brick wall was built in order to keep you safe and secure, in which case, why are you even trying to get through the brick wall?
Mm-hmm.
So I can get really picky about people's language, because it's like, is that really right? So I can remember once, everybody uses the analogy about the iceberg, where it's the 10% and yet there's all that 90% below. That's great as an analogy, but as a metaphor, it's like, well, what's the 10% changes? Because the real life iceberg reduces in size over time. It moves, like as the center of gravity moves, what is at the top changes. You can get stuck. Icebergs get stuck because of what's underneath the water, not what's on top. So, yeah, I can get quite pernickety. In terms of if somebody says, oh, well, it's like an iceberg, I'll go, well, let's really dive into the iceberg metaphor, shall we? Because we're more likely to find solutions there that we can then apply to, oh, yeah, I'm digging my heels in. I'm like that iceberg, because actually what I'm doing is I'm digging my feet in and I'm refusing to move. Whereas actually they're using the metaphor as a, oh, well, people don't understand me, or whatever the, use of it is, which is, there's no judgment about it. It's just the fact that sometimes we'll use it without fully understanding the full breadth and juiciness and magic that sits below if we really dive into the metaphor. So just be careful what you say, because I'll just go, somebody the other week, as I don't understand, and then proceeded to give me a whole load of metaphors. And I said, well, there you go. The metaphors, you've just used a whole load of metaphors. So what do you mean when you use those words? So that's the book. That's what the book's about. The podcast is very much about if you're stuck. Well, the book the same really. Both of them are very much if you're stuck, go along to the book, pick a chapter that resonates, or an episode of the podcast that resonates. So it could be, today it feels like an uphill struggle, or today it feels like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, or whatever, and then just listen. Because what happens is I go out. I did do it the first series. It was me sitting in my office telling stories. But I think what brings it alive is when I take what's going on for me into the landscape, and then I get excited because I notice something for the first time and go, oh yeah, those brick walls there are holding the wall back. So not all brick walls are unhelpful. But when we say, so it feels like we're talking to a brick wall, there's a presumption that the brick wall shouldn't be there. And yet sometimes it's like, yeah, that brick wall needs to be there. Right. Don't go dismantling it. We need to protect it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I was thinking about you when you sent over the bio. You said you would like to do a mindset shift exercise with us, and I thought that would be an interesting segue from basically you just talked about what you're doing in your podcast and your books, but maybe we can see it in action.
All right. Okay, so have you both, because we can do it, because it'll be really interesting because there's two of you on here and then everybody else listening, but we can't hear what they're doing. So do both of you have a piece of paper and a pen to hand?
Yes.
Yep.
So that allows the listeners to actually have gone and either put us on hold while they do it, or they can be getting a pen and paper. All right, so the next thing I need you to do is to think of a situation that you feel like you're going round in circles about. And you're not going to have to tell me anything about the content of the situation. I just need to know you've thought of something where you keep going, not this again. Yeah? So if you both thought of something, everybody listening can be thinking, as I say, they have the beauty that they can put us on hold while they think of something, whereas you haven't got that. You haven't got that. So, Jason, have you thought of something?
Yep.
Yeah, lovely. Anthony,
I'm ready. Yep.
Right, lovely. So, no right or wrong, but what I want you to do, and if it doesn't make sense to draw it, you might want to come off and start walking it, but let's just assume that you can do it drawing. Is what I'd like you to do is start drawing the circle that represents the circle you feel like you're going round in. So just draw a circle, knowing that your unconscious knows why it's drawing it in that, and keep on drawing it Anthony. I'm expecting your head to be down, drawing that circle, because you're going round and round in circles. So just notice the direction of travel you're going in. Notice the speed with which you're going round in, the size that you're going round in. And then what I want you to do is to make changes to that circling. So it might be that you change direction. Now, at some point, I will say something that shifts your internal thinking and you'll go, oh, that's better. But for those listening, but I don't know when that is, so I'll continue to give you the sorts of things that work. So, change direction. That may or may not shift anything. Go quicker. Oh, you might hear my screeching on my pen. So, go quicker. Go slower. And it could be that it needs to be slower in a different direction, quicker in a different direction. Play around with different direction, bigger, smaller. What happens if you go round in squares? I know. Oh, I see Anthony's face. For those listening, without, Anthony's face did something then where it's like, oh, that's different. Yeah? So go round in squares. It could be that you need to go round in triangles. Could be that you need to go round in rhomboids or whatever, I don't know. Or what happens if you break free of the circle? What happens? Does it go in? Can you break free and then go round in triangles? Is it about breaking free and going, oh, that's better? Now, it could be that you need to pick a different colour pen for those listening. Could be about the fact that actually this circle needs to be so much bigger that you're going to have to get a flip chart paper out. I've had people, you could walk it. So the other thing is that if anybody sort of was out on their run listening to us and went, oh, I'll do this when I get back in, don't think you have to wait till you get back into a pen and paper. Find somewhere that's safe to do this. And then just walk in the circle. So walk in a circle that represents the circle that you've been feeling as if you're going round in, and then make changes to it. So walk quicker, walk. Sometimes when you're walking, you might be able to sort of step in, step out, just play around with making changes to the circling. So I'm going to come to you two now and find out what you noticed. So there's no right or wrong. Anthony, where did you get to? Does it feel, if you now think about the original situation you felt like you were going around in circles about, does it feel any different?
I ended up making what looks to me like a bunch of balloons.
Nice. Okay. And as you imagine those balloons, you don't have to, and the other thing is that your brain has said, it felt like we were going round in circles and now I've got balloons. Your logical brain doesn't need to understand what those two meant, yeah? What you've given your brain is here's a before and here's an after. So your brain now can go, oh, that's different. So as you imagine these balloons, and you now think about the original situation, how does that sit, and you don't need to share anything about the situation, but how does that situation feel different?
That there are analogous problems that I can solve that'll help me get to the bigger problem.
Cool. And the reason I came to you first was that your body language shifted more than Jason's did. So there seemed to be a shift. Your shoulders were higher and they dropped a bit at one point. When I asked you to go round in triangles, your shoulders dropped. So it's that whole, so something shifted.
Here's my picture.
And the thing is, we don't need to know. Oh, wow, how cool is that?
That's amazing.
Jason, where have we got to? How does the situation feel that you were thinking about going round in circles?
So I've got, I drew it in a couple different circles in different directions. I've got a square, I've got a diamond, I've got this other weird, it's like in a line, but then it circles back on itself. But
right, yeah.
I don't know if it shifted at all. The image that came into my mind, that drawing where there's a square staircase, but it always leads back to the same place.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the mental image I've got in my head.
All right, lovely. So we absolutely know that is an impossible image.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, so not everybody listening will have drawn a circle that's like that. Yeah. But the fact that you have, it's that in what way is it helpful to know that it's like you're forcing it into be something that's not even real.
Yeah, that's
Now, what I'm getting for you, not for Jason, and this is where other people, sorry, Jason, not Anthony, but for Jason, is to think about what happens. So I don't think, Anthony, you need to do it, but Jason, what happens if you rip your piece of paper?
let's do it.
And break that, because basically what I was hearing from you is that it doesn't matter what I do with this circling because it will keep going, because it's impossible, and it will still, even if I draw it weirdly, it'll still join together and look like it goes round in a circle. So for yours, I would suggest
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, cool. And that noise cancelling has meant that we can see that you've done that. It didn't come over, that we couldn't hear it. However, so how does that now feel about the situation that you were thinking about going round in circles about?
I mean, it feels a little bit freeing in that, like, I have control over that thing. Right? Like, I have ripped it, right? Like, I've done something to break that circle, metaphorically anyway, but, you know.
The thing is, somebody said to me once, well, what do people do then? It's like, no, that was it. It's like I feel freer. What did you say, Anthony? I can't remember what you said. There was some description you said about how it felt different.
That there's different problems that I can focus on instead of the big one.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. So both of you now, and I'm hoping that that's the same for anybody listening, have now, oh, okay, I now feel different about the situation. Therefore, as a result of the feeling changing or the mindset changing, then different. Somebody once said about, oh, I don't know what to do. It's like, but do you know what to do next? Yes. So quite often people are coming and they don't even know what to do next. But what they then think they want is the whole answer. I don't know what to do next. So actually what I want to do is for you to come up with a whole strategy with every path and all neatly done. No, we've moved you from not knowing to knowing what's the next thing to do. And it feels different. And that's enough. And then you'll just notice that when you come off the call, you two can tell each other what you were talking about, and then you can refer to, next week you can go, has that changed? Well, that'll be that circling. Because that's the thing, it happens unconsciously because we've ripped it up. Yeah, you've seen yourself do it, but the change has happened unconsciously. Your inner wisdom's going, yay, we now can see different ways of seeing it. But consciously, our brain's going, did we do anything? No, I just feel, no, I made a decision. I feel different. I made that decision. So it'd be really interesting. People could put things in the notes about if they've tried it, what they've noticed. But the whole aim is, and if they go to my website, alisonsmith.co, nothing after the co, on the front page, there is a link to a PDF to talk them through going round in circles. One person, said, and again, this is where no right or wrong, one person said, oh, I was circling the moon. Don't need to know why, but actually what they realised was that they needed the momentum to slingshot back to the earth. So they sort of went round the moon, and then, and I think I don't know if I've included it in that somewhere. I think on my website there is a picture of this moon. So they drew the moon, and then they drew the circle around the moon, slingshotting them back to Earth. And then my observation would be everything to do with their work has shifted because they've sort of come back to Earth. And if you think about it, I've sort of learned to query when people start talking about I'm on the moon, I'm around the moon. It's like, let's get you back to Earth. Now, that's not very... There are some coaches that would say I'm being not clean, because I am imposing nature's patterns on people. And it's like I'm very clear that that is what I do. So night will follow day, will follow night. Tides have high and low tides. Some people's they may have problems when their internal world is not reflected by nature, because they're trying to, I don't know, bypass, most, not all, but most areas in the world have 4 seasons, not all of them. And therefore, you're not going to go straight from spring to winter. So sometimes we're trying to sort of force things like that in life. And therefore it's I'm in spring. It's recognizing we're in spring. I actually need to go through summer and autumn before I get to winter, or vice, in whatever direction. So I think I've learned that if somebody's giving me a pattern in nature, that I'm really, a bitch about going, that's not how it works in nature. Can we go back to how it is in nature? And you can always ignore me later and go back to how you were, but let's just try following nature's patterns.
Yeah.
Nature has millennia of wisdom on its side.
Yeah, absolutely does.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you so much for taking us through that mindset shift exercise. It was definitely interesting. I hope the listeners get some value out of going through that themselves. And as we kind of wrap it up here, we want to just ask you, what's next for you? What are your goals, and how can we and our listeners help you maybe accomplish any of those goals?
Oh, well, I've got a new podcast coming. So it's called The Words We Live By. And it's about, I don't know if either of you have got a phrase. It might be, all things come to you if you keep working, or stitching time saves 9, or
everything is hard, I think, is the words that we often say.
That's the one I was thinking of too. Yep.
All right, everything is hard. So perhaps you could come on my everything is hard. And the whole idea of the podcast is we start by using these sayings because we want them to be inspirational, or they reflect life, and therefore we're quite happy with them. But over time, we start to live as if they are absolutely true 100% of the time. And they become unconscious. Oh my God, I've got to write that down. Unconscious compasses. Sorry, I can get excited when I say something for the first time. I need to write that down. Unconscious compasses by which we make every decision. And what the podcast's about is, first things first, let's get conscious about it. Let's get conscious about the positive elements of it, but let's also get conscious about the unintended consequences of us applying this saying to our lives as if it is true 100% of the time. Because as soon as we get conscious, we can make better decisions. So somebody the other week, so I don't know what we do for, what is it? Everything is hard. Really? I mean, see, that feels like the uphill struggle bit. Yeah? Now, the thing about the uphill struggle that I discovered, if you go and listen to the uphill struggle episode of my podcast, is we invariably think it's hard. We don't start thinking the hill is hard, do we? We don't set off up the hill going, the hill is hard. We start to describe it as hard when we get 2 strides from the top. It's an uphill struggle because we can see how far we've come, and that was hard. But we start describing it as uphill when we're near the top. So, everything is hard. Perhaps it's hard because you're looking back rather than going, so how far have I come? But anyway, so that isn't but that's the whole aim. The aim of the podcast is going to be exploring it, and then actually me going, so how might it be helpful? I mean, I don't know. Everything is hard. I don't know that I want to do that, but so that's interesting, because I'm suggesting that every phrase has a positive one. So perhaps for me, that's just inviting me to think about, there are times when I think everything's going to be easy, and therefore I avoid hard, and therefore how can I dive into hard a bit more, would be my take on it. So that's what the podcast's going to do. So yes, I'm quite excited about that, because the normal podcast, the only guest is nature, whereas this one I'm going to have to be learning to talk to people.
That sounds very interesting.
That's where we're at.
We'll definitely keep an eye out for that one. I'll definitely be interested in listening to that. Well, Alison, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic conversation, and it definitely gave us a lot of interesting insights and very, very useful perspective to try and help think about things differently and shift the mindset.
Yeah, and stay tuned, because I'm going to see if this balloon thing turns into something real, and I'll follow up. I don't know what'll happen, but it's very curious.
Cool. Me too.
All right. Thank you again so much for your time, and be well.